Welcome everyone. So you should just be joining into our webinar this morning. We are just in the process of getting us all set up. So thank you for joining. We're really excited that you could join us today to talk about some of the realities of student life as part of the range of activities that are going on across the UK for University Mental Health Day. I'm Rosie, I'm the Chief Exec of Student Minds, and I'm also joined by our trustee, Aniska. I would just apologise that in this exact moment, my camera has failed, and so I'm joining on another laptop, but I will let Aniska kick off by doing an introduction.
Thank you, Rosie. Hi, everyone. As Rosie said, I'm a trustee at Student Minds and a team lead at Mind. We'll be co-chairing the session today, and we wanted to start by giving you a flavour of what we know to be the reality for lots of students at the moment. In the last year, we have seen multiple changes across higher education and within our student communities. Students have had their university lives moved completely online and back again and multiple times, and are continuing to be disrupted by national and global events and an overall lack of support. As we've transitioned away from lockdowns to a greater sense of normality, we've been able to come together again as communities, and this has helped to foster a sense of belonging that we know was sorely missed during the pandemic. However, this year has also seen fresh challenges for students, with the cost of living crisis, strike action across the country, the housing crisis, and many more events impacting student mental health and well-being. I'll just pass over to Rosie to continue our introducto.
Thank you, Aniska, and thank you, everyone. I'm here, finally, the joys of remote working. To say a little bit more, as Student Minds, we want to continue to amplify conversations around student mental health whilst encouraging the whole university approach. And we do want to commend today also those institutions that are participating in the charter programme. You may have noticed the milestone before Christmas where we announced those first universities who have received the award. But today, on University Mental Health Day, we wanted to give students the opportunity to speak about their experiences. And as always, the option is to share whatever feels comfortable and appropriate for people to share themselves. So they're going to be speed panels, but we'll be speaking about three really important topics: cost of living, belonging, and also finding balance. So let's get started with the first panel. Back to you, Aniska.
Thanks, Rosie. So cost of living. It's safe to say that the cost of living crisis is impacting the majority of us. With prices of food and energy continuing to rise, it can be felt in everyday life. However, students are being impacted greatly, with 83% of students telling us they're concerned about their current cost of living situation. With a lack of financial support being provided from the government, they're having to make decisions and sacrifices around what they spend their income on. And we have seen that 31% said that they have cut back on their eating, with 28% saying they're likely to do this. 44% have taken on part-time jobs, with a further 32% saying they're likely to do this. And 41% have spent savings they didn't want to use. This is unsurprisingly impacting the mental health and well-being of students, with 60% telling us that their financial situation is negatively impacting their well-being. Back to you, Rosie.
Thank you. So we'd like to welcome our first panelists. So we have Tom Allingham, Selina Ferreira and Mahabub Shihag as well. So please do join us on screen. Tom is from Save the Student. Selina is the current Wellbeing and Liberation Officer at the University of Manchester Students' Union, and Mahabub is on the Student Advisory Committee. So I'd like to start by speaking first to Selina and then Mahabub on what impact you're seeing for yourself or friends in relation to cost of living. You could also talk on about your experiences with your current student loans or any support that's been helpful, but we'll leave it to you. So Selena, do you want to kick us off? And I'm not hearing your sound just yet, Selena. We'll give you a moment to just try and get that working again, and we'll go over to Mahbub in the meantime.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Before I start, am I audible? Can you hear me, everyone, clearly? Brilliant. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I'm myself an international student studying here at the University, Coventry University, London, and I'm also an elected officer. With the living cost crisis, especially as I work for the international student here at the university, what I found is more affected us being an international student here, being based in London, is the living cost crisis. The way the accommodation cost has been increased, it's dramatically, and it's surviving for us. And I know many of the students are taking a year off because they're trying to leave the UK for a year and go back to the country. And after a year, they want to coming back because it's really, really difficult for them to survive their tuition fees, 20,000, 25,000. And the accommodation is, if I talk about a few months earlier, the accommodation cost, I myself used to live in a one room, and that was like £800, and now it's £1,200. And this is something we never expected, because the financial ability that we had and our families investing on us back in the country, it's not actually enough right now to survive. So it's somehow not actually going well for us. So what we have to do, we have to take in extra jobs. So we have to work extra hour right now to just survive, just to pay the accommodation costs as well. And this is something not allowing us to spend more time on study, because earlier what happened, we used to spend extra hours, like extra few hours to do some extra research, connecting with the people, going different places to meet with the people as well. But right now it's getting difficult. We have to work, we have to go extra hours to work to get some money to fulfill our basic needs, because our families they are struggling as well to be as well as the money and stuff. So as an international student myself, and my friends and my university students, when I talk to other students as well who are studying at the different universities, so this is something difficult for us. And when it comes to the support from the university, it's not actually the way we're actually looking for. The university is offering 200, 255, 250 pounds, something like that, the hardship fund. And that's something not even a week, like, you can even survive a week. So it's something not even enough for the students who are based in London. So they can't even survive the monies or the support the university is offering. So what I believe, or the international students believe, that in these circumstances, there are a few things that the university can do to support us. I myself am working with the university, and my particular university, to let them know what the possible options they can take. One of the things I was actually suggesting them to do is allowing us to provide more installment for the tuition fees. But the universities, they're very strict on that they
And I think we've just had another technical difficulty. Thanks for bearing with us there. But I think what was really helpful there is that Mahbub was capturing really a lot of the financial pressures, a lot of how this relates to housing, the actual, the real practicalities of meeting those bills. So I'm really grateful for that. And let's see, Selena, if we can hear you, and if you want to add some reflections yourself.
Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Oh, thank God. Okay, good. These are the typical technical issues that we always have. So I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Selena. I was a student at the University of Manchester. I'm an European student, which means technically I came as a UK home student, but I didn't have the maintenance loan that UK students have. So I feel like I did go firsthand through the experience of the money that you have in your bank account is not enough. Your parents can't support you more than that. You got to juggle those part-time jobs and find as much support as you can. So I feel like I think my experience at university really reflected the struggles of students that come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. And that's what motivated me to become, well, an elected representative of the student community, leading in well-being and liberation. But my main concern was always financial barriers to educational access and student experience. And then the cost of living crisis hit. And I was like, okay, well, now is really the time to work on these things. It's been a great privilege to be able to work with my university on this, because there was a genuine willingness to help students during these difficult times. And something that we've been doing is basically just getting that access to support as easy as possible. So we put more funding into hardship funds. We gave a one-off payment to students. We created a community fridge and a food pantry as well. We put those hot tap water around campus, microwaves, but this is all mitigation work to the structural issues that we're facing currently. I did catch a little bit of housing when I joined again, so I realized we were talking about it. We all know the issue of housing and the maintenance loan. I feel like what this really showed us is the need for structural change that we need in this country, and also to really look at students and see the struggles they're going through, because for some of us, these struggles are not new. The issues to social mobility and the role that universities play to help bridge that social mobility and bridge students from low socioeconomic backgrounds to having an equal opportunity in life and being able to fulfill their dreams. It is so important, and that has been tested out every day now during the cost of living crisis. How can universities step up? How can they help? How can they make sure that students that have invested their money and their time and even their mental health to a certain extent into getting this degree, is it worth it? Is this going to help us in the future? And for some universities, it's been great to see them stepping up. For others, we need to support them and help them and guide them on how they can do more. But I feel like this is a joint conversation we all need to have about what can we do now and how can we look at student life with a different lens, with a more attentive one, and looking into how all aspects of student life impact their well-being and mental health. So I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Celine. I'm really interesting to hear about that combination of things that you've been able to do within your officer role in Students' Union, but also where the limitations of that are as well. And that brings us on really nicely to speak with Tom. So Tom, I know you've been hearing from lots of students and started a campaign petition to the government on this issue. I know that Student Minds and perhaps some other organisations as well are supporting the calls in that. So could you share a little bit more about this work, and also the kind of support that you think should be in place, or any of the good practice that you want to highlight? What's your take on this, Tom?
Yes. So as you say, we've started a petition, which is for the government to increase maintenance loans to catch up with inflation. So just a brief précis of the situation for anyone that's not aware. Maintenance loans rather, each year are calculated as an increase on the previous year using projections of inflation. Now, as we're all aware, inflation has massively exceeded projections over the last couple of years. So what's happened is maintenance loans have only gone up by 2 or 3%, whereas inflation has exceeded 10%. And what that amounts to in real terms is that some students are now up to £1,500 worse off every single year. So as a result, we've started a petition to try and force the government to essentially close that gap, to remove that £1,500 shortfall, because as Selena has already said, there are lots of great things that universities can do, and she's done amazing work by the sounds of it, setting up the community fridge, hot water, microwaves, all these kind of things are really fantastic initiatives. But fundamentally, they are sticking plasters. And what we need is central change from the government. You can scrimp, you can save as much as you want. But for example, our stats found that the average shortfall between maintenance loans and living costs is now £439 a month. So every month, students are having to find, on average, £439 just to get by, just to make ends meet. Like I say, you can scrimp, you can save as much as you want. You're not going to bridge that gap just by being clever with money. Fundamentally, the maintenance loan needs to increase. It's lower than minimum wage in many cases. In the majority of cases, I would say. The minimum wage, of course, being what the government deems to be the minimum amount that someone could feasibly live on. The maintenance loan is below that. That's the level of money that we are talking about here. And obviously, as we've heard from Mahbub as well, lots of students don't even have the maintenance loan. So that's a whole different kettle of fish. But just in terms of domestic students, the maintenance loan has to increase. And yeah, many of you will have already signed it. You've already touched upon the fact that Student Minds have supported the campaign, which is fantastic. But if anyone else wants to sign up as well and support the campaign, if you head to sts.ac/fix student loans, you can sign a petition. And if you could share it as well, we would really appreciate that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tom. And I think it's really helpful to have those figures set out really clearly, and that recognition that, there are, we know there's been some schemes available to the general population that haven't been available to students, and the loans is one part of balancing the picture for students. So thank you, everybody. I wonder, actually, before we go on to our next panel, because we're going to be going on to talk about community and belonging, I wondered really for either Selina or Mahabub, if there was anything you've noticed in terms of the impact that cost of living is having on student socialising. If either of you feels you want to speak to that, please feel free to wave at me now. Yeah, Selina.
Yes, the impact on socializing is real, and that is something that we've discussed a lot with the university. So in the beginning of the academic year, the Students' Union did a huge survey with students. We got over 6,000 responses, and one of the main features of that survey was the fact that students were experiencing food insecurity, but equally as much there was a need for socializing and no funds for that. So all students were cutting on socializing, they were cutting on food, they were cutting on transport, they were reducing their housing expectations. So we couldn't solve some of those problems, but definitely helping them socialize is one of the main reasons why we exist as a students' union. So we did set up some funds for them to help them join sports and academic societies without having to pay those huge fees that come with that. That was one of our priorities, but the need for socializing, is a human need, but students, they move from home, they move to a different city, they want to settle here, they want to create a sense of belonging, which we'll bring to the next topic. But if they can't afford it, it's really, really difficult to actually make those connections, make those friends, and settle in a new place. So I feel like it's very easy to trivialize, that they want to socialize, they can't afford it, they just want to go for a pint. It's actually much more serious than that. It's the need to find a community, need to find friends and a sense of belonging there. And for that, you do need funding, and students right now can't afford it. So we really need to take this seriously, because it does impact mental health and well-being.
Thank you very much, and thank you all. And as you go back off screen, and I invite our next set of panelists to turn on their cameras, I'm really grateful that you've set us up for what we're going to get into next. So I'd now like to welcome Tom, Raquel and Rihanna on screen. And just to give a bit of background, so Tom is a senior lecturer in higher education at the University of Portsmouth, involved research and student engagement, embedding employability into the curriculum, and also the chair of the RAISE network, who research student engagement. Raquel is a recent graduate in a Masters of Clinical, Social and Cognitive Neuroscience from City, University of London, and also has joined on the student organising at Student Minds, but before that was a representation and democracy coordinator at City as well, and a SU Vice President in Middlesex. And also Rihanna, who is a graduate from the University of Kent, who's worked with us in the past to create content for our channels, but is also a social entrepreneur and the founder of the Dominica Dementia Foundation, a youth-led charity. So thank you all of you for joining us. We're going to start with a little bit of background on the data in this area. So our data has demonstrated that feelings of belonging and community amongst the student population has improved since the height of the pandemic. So now seeing 54% of students feeling part of a community, up from 38% in 2021. However, we're still seeing 23% saying they do not feel this way and recognise there is a lot of work to be done. I wanted to highlight that a key tenet to the charter, the University Mental Health Charter, is encouraging universities to foster this sense of belonging through multiple avenues, including curriculum, through transition points and social activities. and that this is not only crucial to student wellbeing, but also to academic attainment. So our panelists are going to speak further to this. So I'm going to start with Tom on this one, and ask you just to share some opening reflections about the role of belonging in supporting wellbeing, perhaps the role of curriculum on this, and anything to highlight to those that have joined us today. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Rosie, and thank you to the speakers who have spoken already about the cost of living crisis. Belonging and community building has absolutely been researched by many people and is referenced often as one of the main solutions to improving student sense of belonging and then later student success in higher education. It's part of the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that says actually to fully thrive in society and in our lives, we need to have that high sense of belonging and actually mattering as well, feeling like we matter as part of our communities. I think some things that can give us a sense of belonging are really overt and really identifiable, like social opportunities or certain activities. But also, it's important to remember that some things that also create that sense of belonging are a bit more subtle. So it could be things like culture, it could be things like friendship, and creating those opportunities in the university can be very easy for certain students and be full of barriers for other students. So I think in regards to the curriculum, when we talk about belonging, we often talk about the rich experiences higher education is known for, so sports teams and societies, social events. For some students, the curriculum is their only part of their university experience that they will ever engage with. And therefore, it's really important for the curriculum that we're not just doing didactic teaching where staff teach at students and then they leave, that actually there's lots of opportunities to have conversations, to do group work, and to use the core content, the timetable content of our courses to create those communities. So that's actually sacrificing a bit of content time to have those conversations. When we're looking at belonging in higher education, I think it's a really easy agenda to jump on the bandwagon and get behind. It's something that we all want to feel supported in whatever community we are in, whether that's work or education. But I think there's lots of research to be doing. Yes, of course, looking at those hooks of belonging, that things that allow people to gain that sense of belonging. But also we've got to be doing exactly the same with what we've looked at in regards to accessibility for higher education, in regards to decolonizing the university. And that's looking for the instances that cause the opposite of belonging, which is alienation. So the opposite of belonging is feeling completely alienated. And there's lots of things about the university that can block students being able to fully participate, and that can create circumstances or cultures that can be alienating for certain students. So I think there's questions not just of how we can look at belonging at our institutions, but also how we can identify alienation scenarios when they occur and try to do something about those. So I'll stop there for now.
Thank you so much. So that's really set the scene on how universities can be approaching this. Thank you. And I know that Aniska, you've got some questions that you want to pick up as well.
Yeah, so to Raquel and Rihanna then, in the last few years, there's been quite rightly an increase in focus on inequalities and the experiences of student communities that experience discrimination and barriers in wider society. Can you share a little bit more about what barriers you've seen here? And either one of you, welcome to go first with that.
Raquel, do you want to go? Okay, yeah, sure. In terms of barriers, can you just repeat the question again? Sorry.
Yeah, of course. So let me get that back up for you. So we're saying that in the last few years, there's been quite rightly an increase in focus on inequalities and the experience of student communities that experience discrimination and the barriers in wider society. Can you share a little bit more about what barriers you've seen here?
Well, in terms of barriers and belonging, I definitely would echo what Tom has said in terms of diversifying the curriculum. And I think it goes on to the extension of diversifying it so we can have diverse conversations. And that way that, you know, people from different backgrounds can connect on that level, or they can at least see themselves in academia. I think it's quite important. And then also, I think it also comes down to communities related not to just race, but also social causes. I think there needs to be more like a pathway for universities to provide these sort of channels and spaces. So people who care about dementia, or they care about, you know, issues tackling the Caribbean community or African community, that they can go to those channels and they can evoke change within their university. So I think it's just kind of thinking outside of the box, outside of race, outside of our barriers related to race, and how can we close that gap, I would say.
That was great, Rihanna. Yeah, I think it's that intersectional approach, isn't it, that really humanizes students, and bringing in all those different elements for them that connect with those wider social issues, like you mentioned, and aspects of their own identity, and creating a space that's inclusive to be able to bring all of that to the table as well. And Raquel?
I was just going to say, so I've recently graduated from City in a postgrad, and my dissertation was actually around understanding how the lack of belonging can actually affect like groups of different students differently. And we noticed that, for example, for a lot of white students, it was around a lot around like socializing. So it would either increase like social anxiety for them, or they would feel that they didn't belong to the place. Whilst for a lot of, at the time, so the other group of students that I used was around Chinese students, and it was around on academic distress, but also like it was the lack of belonging was affecting them to depression, anxiety, academic distress, a lot more than the socializing part. So it's also, for me, it's important to understand, and I do think it is important for the university to look at the wider research that a lot of universities are conducting. Look at the clinical aspect of it. Look at like what the departments are saying, and understanding how we can deliver a tailored approach to well-being, a university-wide, sure, but a tailored way, so different groups of students get their needs met instead of just one fits all approach that universities usually go for.
Really good reflections there, Raquel, and it's really interesting to hear what you said there, because it's such a universal experience, belonging, but at the same time there's a real local element here too, and how can we learn about all the different unique experiences that all different student communities experience, and understand them properly as well. Rhiannon?
Yeah, I was going to say as well, on that back of that, is also creating spaces that appreciate or engage in belonging. So you got your international students coming in, they will look for a sense of belonging more than the people who are in home kind of status students, because they'll probably come with their friends to university. But for someone based in Caribbean and you're coming to the UK, you're probably the only person in your family, in your friends network that is coming to the UK. So you're going to have to do and build a new set of networks and a new set of friends. And how do you go about that when you don't even know how to get on the bus yet, and you don't know what bank account you should use, and all that sort of thing, finding, affordable housing, or where do you find inclusive housing? So you're, around people from the same background as you. It's just thinking about those small things, makes a great difference, because when you feel more confident in, oh, I know where to go to my bank, I know how to get the bus from A to B, you want to be with friends, you want to engage with other people. So it's really just thinking outside the box of how we can support international students, and just students from all backgrounds, from wherever they're coming from, if it's the UK or Ukraine, the Caribbean. How do we support them so they feel confident in seeking their own sense of belonging at university?
100%, Rihanna, thank you for that. And just passing over to Tom as well to build on that, I think too. Oh, you're on mute, Tom.
Sorry, there we go. Rhiannon's absolutely correct there. We've got to look for those belonging cold spots. So particularly, still so many universities I visit are designed around the full-time undergraduate experience, with so much heavy emphasis upon September, but still so much heavy emphasis on presenteeism as well. So the last element of the talk was talking about the main barrier to participation now is money. And I'm at a commuter student university at the University of Portsmouth. So that students are struggling financially, and they're telling us they're struggling financially, and that's impacting their decision whether to come to campus or not. So we need to look at not just the accessibility to these opportunities, but do they all need to happen online, or have this great emphasis of being in the room for hours upon hours of time? Can we have some belonging creating opportunities that are smaller in contact time, more accessible in contact time? But also, can we relook at that academic year There are also, on the flip side, of students who require and wish to have more belonging creating opportunities because they're throwing themselves into full-time higher education. There will be some students who want less of that if they're a part-time student and they've got already a lifestyle outside of the university, and the university perhaps is a smaller part of their lives. And then the answer there perhaps to look at is ensuring, well, maybe some students will say, well, I get my sense of belonging elsewhere, I'm okay. We need to ensure those students always matter as well, so have a sense of mattering. I think that's something every staff member can get behind. I speak with staff members sometimes saying, well, I work on an advice desk, I can't give a student a sense of belonging because I see them for 10 minutes and never again. But you can make that student have a sense of mattering. So that's part and parcel in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's about a sense of belonging and a sense of feeling loved. So it's feeling like you matter in the context you are in, and that's the university for our discussion today.
It speaks so well to Rihanna's point there about that space. That space can be everywhere. It's across the higher education experience as well. And Raquel?
I was just gonna add also on the course side, because basically, so during my undergrad, I was that student that was about to drop out, and only in my third year actually found a community, and it was sports, and I was very lucky at the time. It was my third year, and I'm really grateful it happened. But now my postgrad experience, so I was a postgrad part-time student working full-time, and the majority of students in my course were experiencing exactly the same. So it wasn't that we wanted to go out for the parties and everything, because, the majority of students were mature students. But one of the things that I found the most valuable, and I'm really, really grateful for all the academics to kind of building that opportunity, we used to have one breakfast a week. So all of us would come half an hour, so we wouldn't have to travel an extra day on campus because, we couldn't really. We were working full time, but the extra half an hour or an hour before the class that all of us would kind of like just join in before, have a conversation with each other, check in on each other. And then whenever we would have like group work or whenever we would have like group conversations during the class, it was so much easier because we've had that socializing before. It was kind of like a warm up. And I would feel like if for universities in the future, I feel like there's always this pressure around like socializing and everything, but creating a community within your course or creating like those academic communities is so important, because not the majority, but a large number of students are just going to university and going back home. They don't have that initial link. I think it starts with the course for some of them, and then it continues, it builds up to the rest. But I'm really, really grateful because it completely changed my whole experience this postgrad. As a postgrad part-time working full-time was mainly due to all of that course belonging and course community that I have.
Thanks, Raquel. It's all about building relationships, isn't it? And building those communities is not just this sort of socializing blanket that you mentioned. Thank you all. So we'll now swap our screens over to our next set of panelists, and they'll be focusing on the idea of balance. And I'll just pass over to Rosie to introduce them to you.
Well, thank you, everyone. So we're now welcoming on screen Dominique, Lee and Taylor. So just to give a brief introduction, Dr. Dominique Thompson is an award-winning GP and young people's mental health expert with 2 decades of clinical experience. Also sits on the Student Minds clinical advisory group, helping with our programs. Lee Ovens is a first-year student studying public health and wellbeing part-time with the Open University, and also works full-time at Student Minds as an operations officer. And Taylor Gibson, who is a third-year student studying primary education at Canterbury Christchurch, and is also editor of the Student Minds blog. So welcome, everyone, and a little background on this, first of all, from Aniska.
Thanks, Rosie. So as a student, there are so many different aspects of life to juggle between studying, volunteering opportunities, and clubs and societies, participation in various forms. Students often don't get much downtime just for themselves. As well as this, with ongoing issues such as the cost of living crisis, students are having to make sacrifices, and those sacrifices are usually at the expense of things they enjoy most. In our research, we've seen that about 46% of students were having to cut back on the things they do for enjoyment, with a further 33% saying that it is likely they will also have to do this. Without students having the space to do things that relaxes them, brings them that enjoyment, it's unsurprisingly having a negative impact on their mental health. With 57% of those students juggling employment and their studies, saying it causes them stress often or all the time. And we've also seen in research published since the start of the year that 46% of students are missing out on or cancelling social plans due to the cost of living crisis. And another saying that 56% of students have had to cut back on socialising as well. So I'll pass over to Rosie now to kick us off with some questions.
Thanks, Niska. So over to our panelists, and I'm going to start by coming to you, Taylor, if that's okay. As a primary education student, could you speak about how you find balancing your placement, volunteering, and other social activities?
Yeah, it's not easy because there's a lot to fit in a day, and I think it's different for different people. Some people thrive off of having a routine, some people are okay being spontaneous, but I think it's a lot of the time it's just knowing when to say no and where to draw the line, because you need to balance doing the things on your to-do list that you need to do and turning up to everything you need to turn up to. But then you've got to have a social life and you've got to do the things that you want to do as well. Otherwise, you're not going to be happy and you're not going to enjoy the experience of university.
Absolutely. I think that really sets the scene for us. Thank you. And Lee, with studying remotely and also being employed, how do you achieve that balance and make sure you get time away from the screen too?
Thanks, Rosie. Yeah, it's difficult, and as might be obvious to some people, I am a mature student, so I am not only studying and working, but I'm also learning how to study again. So I'm only in week 6, of my first year, so I'm still trying to learn how to study. And what I try to do is I set aside at least one day a week. For me, it's a Wednesday evening where that is set aside for personal interests. So I dance as a hobby. That's set aside for dance. On a good week, I do not look at, I obviously work that day, but I don't look at anything to do with studying. The difficulty is that I do have a disability that can impact my ability to have screen time. So there are some weeks where if I've been unwell, then that has to go out the window on a Wednesday, but it's all about sacrifice. And I still have a lot to go in finding that balance, but I'm getting better week on week.
Thank you very much, Lee. And I think, yeah, you absolutely speak to the range of kind of multitasking that goes on there, and then there's the barriers also involved, so thank you. I'm also going to go now to Dominique. Dom, if you could share a bit more about, from your perspective as a professional that's worked with a lot of different students as well, on why it is important for students to be able to have that time for themselves. Any reflections on this issue? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I would say that having spoken to a fair number of students in my career, one of the things that sometimes happens is we just forget we're humans and we're not machines, and we need that balance so that we can thrive, not just survive. And I think it happens because lives are very busy. Students often have multiple roles now. They're not just a student, they might be a carer, a parent, a worker, part of a team. There's somebody's partner maybe. So all of these roles have to be balanced and juggled. And so we have to learn, as we always do through life, how we balance these things. And for me, finding balance means avoiding extremes. We shouldn't have extremes in our life. We shouldn't sleep too little or eat too little or exercise too much or work too much. Now, I completely recognize that we live in a culture that demands a lot of us. We've heard about the pressure on students to, earn money just to keep going and so on. But we still need to look after ourselves. And I hear words like sacrifice, and honestly, my heart goes out to students who having to do that. But perhaps we can therefore encourage students to look after themselves by prioritizing things like sleep. Sleep it's such a sort of, I always talk about it as a superpower, but it is free, and it is something that we do need every night for the right amount of hours. So if we can avoid sacrificing things like that, perhaps we will get a little bit further with having that balance in our lives. But it isn't easy, and we can maybe talk a bit more about other ways that people can do that practical finding balance.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dom. And it is always good to have the prompt on sleep as well. Appreciate it for all of us, I think. So I guess to go back to Taylor and Lee, I guess reflecting on that a little bit more, what sort of resonates with you? Is there anything that you've also recognized, or you've, with other students, you've shared advice, tips with each other that would be helpful to highlight as well? Because we really recognize today we've got a lot of people that are joining us, and that there are a range of students, professionals, so people can gain different things from the discussions we're having. So Taylor or Lee, anything else that you'd like to highlight?
I just wanted to add to what you said about working like a machine. It's really difficult to get trapped in the routine and trapped in the cycle. And especially when, things are the same every day. You're at uni, then you're at work, then you're doing whatever you need to do, and getting trapped. And like you said, forgetting that you're human and you can have a social life and you don't want the extremes. But it's realizing that we're also not in this perfect world. So sacrifice does happen, but it's, well, like we said, about finding the balance of making sure that you're still, you're not sacrificing your mental health for it.
Well put. Thank you, Taylor. And Lee?
Thanks, Rosie. So I'll be very, very honest. Working from home and studying online at home has been probably the most isolating experience of my life. And where I study, we have online forums, but they are just my group's forum is dead. Nobody chats in it. So I've not had anyone to bounce any tips off of. But if there's anyone else out there listening who's in the same boat as me, I've got some tips to share. So I'm quite, I say strict with my diary. I like to lay out my diary week on week. It's not necessarily strict. Things can move, and I'm a very flexible person, as anyone who works with me knows. But I like to make sure when my day at work ends, I'll set an hour aside where I just do something for me. So that could be going out a walk with my best friend and her dogs, or it could just be taking some extra time to cook a nice meal that night instead of something quick. Just to make sure I've got that break before I then go on to start studying. I'm quite lucky in that two of my closest friends are also studying at the same time as me. They just don't really live anywhere near me. So what we now have, which will start this week, because they were both kind of feeling the same, is we're setting up 2 monthly study buddy sessions. So we're not even going to speak. We're just going to congregate in the same room and have almost like a LAN party, but we're studying rather than playing games. And then one of us will make dinner for the others that evening, because we all are kind of the people who run our households. So we're all in charge of the housework and the cooking and everything else. So we'll take turns, and each of us will get a chance to put our feet up and have just a glass of wine at the end of the night. And then also just, as you say, I feel, as Dom said, is prioritize sleep, because I'm a person that doesn't sleep very much anyway, and even then sometimes I find my sleep impacted. So making sure you've got kind of a strict deadline, like this is when I'm going to log off, and make sure that you're logging off an hour before you actually want to go to bed, so you get some downtime. Because from experience, I didn't do this at first, and studying and then going straight to bed, you're just going to lie in bed thinking about all the things you just learned about. Because it is a lot and it's interesting, and the more interesting the subject is, the more your brain wants to focus on it. So you need to have some time and try to make those things things that aren't screens if you can. Some people's hobbies are being on screen. I'm a gamer. I like to play games, but I try to have at least one night where I'm reading a book or something that's not staring at a screen. And I also, while I'm studying, sorry, I'll wrap up very quickly, but while I'm studying, I tend to, for my study breaks, because I used to be a person who would go to the gym 5 times a week, dance 4 times a week. I'm obviously not getting that now, so I try to find like an exercise program that comes in reps, and then I can go, right, I've got to the end of this section, I'm going to do 10 minutes of exercise, and then I've reset my brain a bit and I can go back into the next section. And I found that really helpful. You don't get the intense workout that you do if you're just doing a solid hour, but you still feel the burn, and it just helps refresh your brain a wee bit. So if those tips helps anyone who's in the same boat as me, then I'll be glad.
Absolutely. I'm really grateful for that, Lee and Taylor. I think we know from our research, from our history, starting out as a charity focused around peer support, how much it matters to hear people that you connect with sharing those kind of messages, and it provides a bit of inspiration. Even though different things work for different people, there's something that makes us all feel seen and supported by hearing those messages. So thank you very much for sharing that. I did want to come back to Dom and just see, hearing some of this, I mean, you know, we are really fortunate at Student Minds that we have so many students who engage with us, willing to share, and for example, through the Student Space programme, where we provide lots of online content, psychoeducation videos, working with professionals and students. We've got lots of materials that people can maybe use. But I guess wondering if you do come across a friend who is having quite a difficult time in actually achieving that balance, maybe those conversations on helping, wondering how someone could approach that and start that discussion.
Yeah, I mean, students are always being asked to, you know, support their friends, support each other, and they're fantastic at doing it, actually. So I would think it's probably important to keep it quite simple. You're not going to fix all their problems, okay? Your friends' problems are their problems, but you can be alongside them. You can offer to be alongside them, and that starts with listening. So the first thing is just hear where they are with it all. Really listen to them. Don't try and solve all their problems straight away, like my husband does to me every time I tell him something. It's just the way it is. You want to fix it for them because you love them. That's fine. But let them tell you what the issues are for them. Okay, what are their priorities? And maybe together you could sit down together and just write some of those out, bit of, you know, brainstorming, do a bit of sort of, okay, what are the issues? What are the priorities? What should we sort of look at first? And if you do it with someone else, it just makes it so much easier to feel that you've got support. You know, that friend alongside you makes such a difference. And then together you'll come up with, you know, well, maybe we'll look up some, you know, it might be a time management app, or it might be, should we look at some skills workshops at the university? It might be, let's just I love Lee's suggestion. Let's you know, meet up and have those kind of get-togethers that we've scheduled in and we know they're going to happen. And sometimes just knowing it's going to happen just lifts you, doesn't it? So I think having somebody alongside you when you're a student who's struggling is really important. But as the student alongside them, as the friend, just remember, you don't have to fix it, but you can be there to help them to find the help they need. And that might be saying something like, you know, you don't have to be perfect. You know that it is okay, that some things are just good enough. Okay, and that's a bit of that conversation around where do I prioritize and what can be just fine, just good enough, or not done at all. And hopefully helping each other like that will make you feel good too. It's why people get involved with all these amazing initiatives. It's because we're humans and we like to help other humans. So hopefully some of those things will have reassured students who are helping other students that you don't have to fix it, but you can just be alongside them.
Thank you, Dom. That's always really helpful. Again, another helpful prompt for all of us. And I know that in our sector, we have lots of really compassionate people. And so that importance of recognising where your responsibilities are, but where you might also need further support, or to make sure someone knows about further support options is really key too. So I would really encourage, if people haven't looked at it before, to look at the Student Space website, studentspace.org.uk as well, to find out about the range of support that's provided both within universities, but then also specialist support that's available in some of our fantastic charity partners as well. So that has given, I think, a really helpful rundown of some of the things that can support in what is really quite challenging times, as the whole of our panelists captured today. But I think for University Mental Health Day, it's always really helpful to leave a session like this knowing some of the places where you can do further learning, get further support as well. So thanks, everybody. Thank you to all of our panelists for all of those helpful suggestions. And this is almost bringing us towards the end of our webinar, but we've got a couple of things we'd like to share before we wrap up. I can see that where I am in the country, it's also snowing now. So I hope that if you're involved with a University Mental Health Day event, you're still going to be able to get some traction on that. Thank you everyone for participating, sharing all of these fantastic insights. And I'm going to hand over to Aniska to support our wrap up.
Thanks, Rosie. So we also want to thank everyone who came and joined us in the audience. And I hope that you have something that you can take away from today and found it useful. The event has been recorded, so it will be uploaded to YouTube later on today for you to watch it back. Feel free to share this with your wider networks and tag us in your social media posts as well. Just passing back over to Rosie.
Great. And as you can see, and you can find online, and there is a real range of map of events going on across universities today. Thank you to everybody who's made that a possibility. We love nothing more than seeing students and staff and different professionals working together to create positive change. So do check out the map as well on the University Mental Health Day website, so you can see what's happening near you. We also wanted to take this opportunity to let everyone who's joined us know that we are in the process of advertising for some roles at Student Mind. So if you've heard about today and you're thinking that you'd like to find out more about our organisation, see how you can get involved, please do go to the Student Minds website. We are recruiting for trustees who have a role in ensuring that as an organisation we continue to keep doing what we were set up to do. And Aniska is a fantastic example of a trustee having a huge impact. So I'm sure, like me, you'd like to join her team. And also that we are in the process of advertising for some new staff roles at Student Mind shortly too as well. So please do keep an eye out for those, because University Mental Health Day is a real milestone in the year where there's a lot that we want to mark and celebrate and amplify, but the work continues all year round. So please do consider being a part of that change with us as well. Please also be sure to keep the conversation going on social media. We'd love it if you could share something that you've taken away from today's conversation, something that really spoke to you, something you'd like to see spoken about more of in the future. You can use the hashtag on Twitter, and the hashtag is Uni Mental Health Day, and our comms team would love it if you tagged them in our posts up with our Student Minds org user name. But yeah, please use that, and also to tag also our friends at UMan, so that it's at UMan UK as well, who work with us and work with us for several years to coordinate the activity that's happening across the day. So I think we're about ready to wrap up. Thank you again for joining. We hope that together we can make sure that no student is held back by their mental health. And keep working with us. Have a really good rest of your day and week, and we hope to see you again at something soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.